My GPS booted up and told me I was in the South Atlantic. That sentence shouldn't mean anything. A screen can say whatever. But when you spend your whole adult life trusting instruments more than your own panicky monkey brain, you feel it like a hand closing around your throat. I was supposed to be 40 miles off the Oregon coast, doing a shallow systems check for a private client with too much money and not enough sense. Same launch point, same chase boat, same weather window. Same dumb checklist I'd done so many times my fingers could do it while my mouth held a sandwich. Power up, stream, comms check, ballast, descent, hover, thrusters, lights, surface, log it, get paid. The sub was a one-man fiberglass and steel egg with a titanium sphere in the belly. Not military, not fancy, just expensive enough to make you careful. It rode behind the chase boat on a cradle, orange flotation collar strapped on like a kid's water wings, and everything about it smelled like epoxy, stale O-rings, and other people's sweat baked into foam. The client, Graham whatever, kept calling it my little explorer. He'd say it like he was talking about a toy, not a pressure vessel. He was the type who thought a waiver was a magic spell. Like you sign it and the ocean becomes polite. He was on deck in a windbreaker that cost more than my truck, filming me on his phone like I was a circus act. Tell them what you're doing, he said. For the followers. I didn't. I just checked my seals and kept my eyes on the water because the water doesn't give a shit about your followers. The chase boat was a 28-foot center console with twin outboards, a dive ladder, a crane arm bolted on for lowering the sub, and a captain named Jory who chewed sunflower seeds like it was a religion. 2 deckhands, both young, both sunburned in that early spring Oregon way where you don't realize you're cooking until your skin hates you. I clipped my comms line to the suit collar, cinched the harness, and got inside the sphere. The hatch closed over me with a heavy clunk that always made my chest tighten for half a second. That sound is a promise. Either it holds or you become a rumor. Inside was normal. Good normal. Instrument glow. Software of fans. The smell of rubber and metal and CO2 scrubber media. My own breath loud in my ears because the cabin is a little too quiet, the way it gets when you're sealed in something that can crush you. Jory's voice in my headset. You good, Nate? Good, I said. Lower me. Crane cable tightened. The sub swung out, kissed the water, bobbed once, and settled. I did the last internal checks, thumbed the thrusters, watched my compass wobble, watched the depth readout sit smugly at 0. Comms check, I said. Loud and ugly. Jory replied. Go make the billionaire happy. I rolled my eyes even though no one could see it and flooded ballast. The sub sank clean. Water climbed the viewport like a curtain. The light outside shifted from bright gray to green-black. The boat noise faded. My world shrank to gauges and the steady little oxygen flow and the soft tick of temperature readings. At 50 meters, the surface was just a brighter stain above me. At 100, it was gone. At 200, everything gets honest. Pressure starts talking to you, not with sound, with a slow creak in the hull and a feeling in your teeth like you're clenching without meaning to. I hovered and did the thruster tests. Left, right, yaw, pitch. Everything responded. I rotated slowly, camera running, lights on low. There is nothing down there except particulate and the occasional flick of something pale that might have been a jelly. The client didn't want science. He wanted footage. He wanted the deep. He wanted to post it with a caption about pushing boundaries. I ran my hand through the checklist anyway, because routine is how you stay alive when your brain starts inventing ghosts. Then I hit a thermocline. You feel thermoclines even in a sub. The water around you shifts density and the whole craft gets a different kind of buoyancy, like the ocean is a layer cake and you just slid into a colder slice. The temp gauge dropped, then climbed, then dropped again like it was arguing with itself. Cabin lights flickered once. I actually said out loud to nobody, "Don't you start." The lights steadied. The temp stabilized. Everything went back to normal. Normal is a liar. I finished the last test and started my ascent. Slow, Controlled. Because decompression is a bitch even when you're dry. Because sudden pressure changes make seals angry. Because if you rush, you screw something tiny up and die in a way that no one can fix. At around 60 meters, I heard it. Not through the headset. Through the hull. A knock. One. Clean. Deliberate. Not wave slap. Not my own gear shifting. Not metal settling. A single, solid thump from outside, like someone tapped the sphere with a tool. I stopped moving without thinking, hands hovering over the controls, and listened. Silence. Then the normal little noises came back. The fan, my breathing, the faint buzz of electronics. Ocean noise doesn't really carry at that depth the way people think it does. You don't hear whales like in movies. Mostly you hear yourself. "Jory," I said into the mic. "You drop anything?" "Negative," he said. "You all right?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just thought I heard something." "You're 200 feet down. You probably heard your own ass," one of the deckhands said, laughing into the channel like he couldn't help himself. I didn't laugh. I didn't answer. I told myself it was the hull equalizing. I told myself it was a piece of kelp or a drifting log bumping me. I told myself a lot of things. I kept ascending. At 30 meters, the lights softened and went greener. At 10, the surface showed as a bright, trembling skin. I eased up until my hatch was just under it and did my surfacing procedure. I pushed up through the last couple meters. The sub broke the surface with a wet slap and rocked in the swell. The cabin brightened. The viewport filled with sky. I reached for the camera switch to stop recording because the client didn't need the boring part. That's when the GPS booted up and told me I was in the South Atlantic. I blinked like I could blink the numbers into being reasonable. I forced myself to run the inertial nav. It agreed. I cross-checked the compass, even though it's almost useless in a steel ball. It wobbled like it was drunk. I unlatched the hatch and shoved it open. The air that hit my face didn't smell like Pacific kelp and diesel and a whiff of sunscreen from the chase boat. It smelled like cold iron in a storm that hadn't formed yet. Like the taste you get when you bite a penny, only it was in the air. It made my tongue go weird. The sky looked wrong in a way I can't make poetic. The color was fine. The clouds were fine. The spacing wasn't. Like somebody swapped the background on a set and didn't line it up. The horizon looked too flat. The swell felt too long, rolling under me in a slow rhythm that didn't match the wind. I climbed out anyway because the sub was rocking and I didn't trust the seals to hold if the chop got stupid. I swung my legs up onto the top of the hull, boots slipping on wet fiberglass, and grabbed the emergency beacon off its bracket. No chase boat. No land where the Oregon coast should have been. No faint smudge of gray on the edge of vision. Just water and a low, flat horizon that went all the way around like I'd been dropped into the middle of a planet that was only ocean. I stood there with the beacon in my hand and did a slow circle like if I turned fast enough, I'd catch the real world sneaking back in. Nothing. I keyed the radio on my suit collar. "Jory. Jory, you there?" Static. Not even the usual hiss. Just nothing. Like the channel was dead. I switched frequencies. Tried the backup. Tried the emergency channel. Still nothing. My hands moved without my permission, doing the steps because panic kills you faster than pressure. I grabbed the SAT handset from the cockpit and dialed the chase boat's number, even though that's not how it works. The handset searched. The little bar crawled. It took too long, and then it locked onto a signal with a delay that made my stomach twist. A voice came through. Not garbled. Not half-eaten by static. "Keep your fucking head, Nate." My brother's voice. Same tone he used when I was 16 and thought I could jump off a quarry ledge into a pond without checking the depth. Same impatient calm, like he was already tired of my bullshit. The problem is my brother hasn't had a voice in 3 years. He died in a car wreck. I watched a closed casket go into the ground because there wasn't enough left of him to pretend. I remember the smell of wet grass at the cemetery and the way my mother's hands shook when she tried to hold onto my arm like I could stop gravity. I dropped the handset like it burned me. The screen still showed connected. I snatched it back up because I'm an idiot and listened again like maybe I'd imagined it. "Look at the stars," my brother said. It was daytime. There were no stars. I stared at the sky anyway, like a trained dog. The clouds thinned for half a second, and I saw a pale that shouldn't have been there. Not the sun. Something else, sharper, like a nail head in the blue. Too crisp, too still. My stomach did that stupid falling thing. I shut my eyes hard and opened them again. The doubt was still there. Under my boots, the sub's hull thumped. Not a wave. A single deliberate knock from below, like something tapped it with a knuckle. I crouched instinctively, like lowering my center of gravity would help if whatever was under me decided to flip the whole craft. "Who is this?" I said into the handset before I could stop myself. My voice came out thin, like I'd been running. The line went quiet for a beat. Then my brother's voice again, closer, like he was standing on the other side of a door. "Don't answer them. You hear me? Don't talk to it." "What the fuck are you talking about?" I said, and immediately hated myself because I just done what he told me not to do. The handset crackled. There was a faint sound under his voice, like water moving through a pipe, like a throat clearing underwater. "Look at the stars," he repeated slower. "You're not what you think you are." "I'm not anywhere," I snapped. "Where's the boat? Where's Jory?" Another knock hit the hull. This one lower and longer, like something dragged a finger across metal. It vibrated up through my boots and into my teeth. I forced myself down into the cockpit and slammed the hatch. The seal seated with a thud that felt like shutting a vault. Inside smelled like hot plastic, stale oxygen, and my own sweat. Normal. I wanted normal so bad I could have cried. I locked the hatch, strapped myself in, and stared at the NAV computer like if I stared hard enough, I could bully it into being right. South Atlantic. I ran the inertial again. Same. I tried to manually input my last known coordinates and ask it to calculate drift. It spat out nonsense. I pulled up the clock. The time was off by 40-something minutes. Not just a time zone thing. Like it had skipped. I checked battery. If I kept systems minimal, lights off, thruster sparing, I had maybe 6 hours. Oxygen for one person for a day if I didn't start hyperventilating. Water for longer. Food I didn't care about. Plenty of time to die slowly and think about every mistake I'd ever made. I tried to reconstruct the last hour because that's what you do when reality starts acting like a prank. The dive itself was clean. Thrusters responded. No alarms. No weird readings until that thermocline. The cabin lights flickered once. I remember laughing after I cursed because it felt good to laugh at nothing. Like I'd proved I wasn't scared. Then I surfaced, and the world wasn't my world anymore. I dialed the chase boat again. Nothing. I dialed the Coast Guard because muscle memory wanted a grown-up. The handset connected instantly, like the call didn't travel anywhere. A different voice answered. My mother. Soft, tired, the way she sounded on the phone when my brother was still alive, and she was still able to pretend the future wasn't a threat. "Nate," she said, "don't answer them." I went cold. Not metaphorically. My skin actually prickled like the cabin temp dropped. "Mom," I whispered. The line stayed open, breathing faintly like someone held a mic too close. "Don't answer them," she repeated, and it wasn't quite right. The cadence was hers, but the pause between words was wrong. Like someone had edited her voice and didn't know where the breaths belonged. My throat tightened. I wanted to say her name. I wanted to scream. I didn't because the second I spoke I knew I'd give them something. A confirmation. A sample. A hook. The handset clicked once like a tongue against teeth. Then, over my headset, faint and wrong, I heard a sound that didn't belong on any channel. A sonar ping. Not from my sub. I didn't have active sonar running. It was a clean bell-like ping that came from somewhere outside, and it had a delay to it, like the echo came back too fast and too slow at the same time. Like the ocean couldn't decide how big it was. My stomach clenched so hard I tasted acid. I killed the handset connection and threw it onto the seat beside me, like it was a snake. The screen still glowed, still eager. Another knock hit the hull. 2 quick taps this time. Like a code. I pulled up the external cameras. Forward cam, dark water, surface chop, particles drifting in and out of the frame. The horizon on the far edge looked too low. Side cam. A pale streak slid out of frame too fast to identify. Not a fish. Too straight. Too smooth. Top cam. Just rippling gray surface, and this is the part that makes my skin crawl even now. A ripple that moved against the swell like something under the water pushed up and the ocean abated. I fired the top floodlight. The cone cut through black and hit something that didn't reflect like water. A flat plane, vertical, suspended out there like a wall, polished in a way that wasn't natural. Not coral, not rock. My light hit it and bounced back at a harsh angle like a mirror. Except the reflection wasn't my sub. In that plane, I saw a different ocean. Different particles. Different darkness. And far behind it, a faint glow like a city at night underwater. Rows of points aligned, not random. Like windows. Like stacked lights. Like someone built something down there and turned it on. I sat there with my mouth open because my brain kept trying to label it. Ice sheet, thermocline artifact, weird camera lens issue. Anything sane. Then something moved on the far side of that plane. A shadow crossed in front of the distant glow, tall and thin, and it didn't swim like anything alive should swim. No ondulation, no fin flick. It just shifted position, smooth and deliberate, like a puppet pulled by a single string. My headset hissed. My brother's voice, again, urgent now. Don't ping them. I hadn't planned to. I still yanked my hand away from the sonar controls like it was a live wire. Because the truth hit me hard. Whatever this was, it had already seen me. It had moved the whole damn sub somewhere else. It didn't need active sonar to notice. The mirror plane drifted closer without making current. It slid like it was on rails, dead smooth. My proximity alarm chirped. I shoved the thrusters to reverse. The sub moved back, sluggish, and the mirror plane matched it perfectly. Same distance, same pace, like the ocean had decided my speed. I killed the thrusters. The sub floated. The plane floated. I punched a small ballast adjustment, a little dump that should have popped my nose up and changed my attitude. The sub bobbed. The plane bobbed with it, keeping the same relationship to my cameras like it was attached to my reality. That's when the stupid thoughts surfaced. I wasn't near it. I was inside a control volume, like a cage. Panic rose up hard enough to make my hand shake. I gripped the controls until my knuckles hurt and forced my breathing slow. In, out, in, out. Because if you hyperventilate, you burn oxygen and you pass out and you die, and none of this matters. Okay, I said to myself, and my voice sounded too loud in the cabin. Okay, procedure. Procedure for what? Being lost in the middle of nowhere with a mirror in the water? There's no checklist for that. There's just don't do dumb shit. So I did the only thing that made sense in a world that didn't. I went down. If I couldn't outrun it on the surface, maybe I could break the geometry at depth. Maybe the plane was some freak surface phenomenon. Maybe it was anchored to a layer. I sealed up, equalized, and flooded ballast. The sub sank. The water outside went from gray to black fast. The surface noise disappeared. Pressure climbed. My ears popped. The hull creaked in a way you feel through bone, slow and complaining. The mirror plane sank with me, still in front, still vertical, still showing that other place with the faint underwater glow. At 200 meters, I told myself it was following because it was a reflection artifact tied to my cameras. At 400, I stopped believing lies. At 600, my authorized depth was a joke. At 800, my "this is a very expensive mistake" gauge started yelling at me. I kept going anyway because my life was cheaper than the client sub. Around 800 meters, something changed. The ocean got quiet in a new way. Not less noise. A dead quiet, like sound died before it could travel. The hull creaks didn't echo. My own breathing sounded muted, like my lungs were wrapped in cotton. Even the little random clicks and ticks you normally hear in a sub, the kind of noises that remind you machinery is doing its job, felt distant. like the cabin wasn't fully inside itself anymore. Then the radio came alive, and this time it wasn't my family. It was a voice that used my family's cadence, but not their words. Like someone learned language by chewing on recordings. "Nate," it said. It used my mother's softness with my brother's impatience layered underneath. It sounded like an impression that had teeth. "Return." I clenched my jaw until it ached. I didn't answer. I stared at the mirror plane and watched the faint city glow behind it pulse once like a heartbeat. "Return." It repeated, and the sub's interior lights dimmed slightly, like it could reach into my power system with a fingertip. My skin went cold. The hair on my arms rose. I started a manual ascent cycle, slow and controlled. I didn't trust the computer anymore. I watched depth tick upward and clean little numbers like numbers could save me. The mirror plane stayed right there, always right there. Then it tilted for the first time, just a few degrees, like it was curious, like it had been watching me fumble around and finally decided to show me more. In the reflection, the distant glow brightened, and shapes emerged out of it. Structures stacked and ridged, like towers built from coral and metal at the same time. Some looked grown, not built, like reef that had been convinced to make right angles. I saw lines between them that were too straight to be natural, like roads, like cables. And I saw movement between them. Not fast, not frantic, orderly. A place with traffic patterns. A city that had rules. The voice in my headset whispered again, close enough that my neck prickled. "Return." My hand shook. I slammed my fist against my thigh to snap myself out of it and tasted blood where I'd bitten my tongue. I forced my eyes away from the city glow and checked my own systems. Depth rising. Battery draining faster than I wanted. Oxygen okay. CO2 scrubber green. Then my forward camera caught something that made my stomach drop into my boots. A small dark silhouette floating in that other ocean on the far side of the plane that looked exactly like my sub. Same shape, same external lights, same stupid orange collar. It drifted there like it was waiting. I stared until my eyes watered. "No," I said, and it came out like a plea. The plane tilted a little more, and the silhouette on the far side rotated as if to present itself, like it wanted me to recognize it. Then, through its porthole, I thought I saw movement. A pale shape inside. Not a fish. Not a reflection. A person. My harness straps creaked as I leaned forward without meaning to, like I could close the distance by will. The radio whispered again, patient. "Return." I wasn't just being hunted. I was being replaced. That thought hit hard enough to make my vision blur. My brain, desperate, did what brains do. It tried to find a narrative that was survivable. Maybe that's footage. Maybe it's a recorded loop. Maybe it's just trying to scare me. Then the hole knocked again. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Like someone practicing a pattern. Like someone learning how to speak in metal. I laughed once, sharp and ugly, because what else do you do? The sound bounced in the cabin and died like it hit damp cloth. "Okay," I said. "Okay, you want me to return. To what? To the mirror? To the city? To the other me? Fuck off." The moment I said it, the cabin lights dipped again. Not a full blackout, just a reminder. A hand squeezing. I shut up. My ascent continued, slow. I didn't dare dump ballast too hard. If I blew a seal at this depth, I'd die before I finished the thought. The plane kept pace like it was inside my same controlled volume. I tried something small. A sideways thruster burst. The sub drifted a meter right. The plane drifted a meter right. I tried to roll. The sub rolled. The plane stayed vertical, but the reflection rolled like it adjusted its view to keep the other ocean aligned. Like it wanted to remain readable. My chest tightened with a particular kind of fear that's hard to explain if you've never been trapped by something that doesn't need to rush. Predators rush. This didn't need to. It was just inevitable. At 600 meters, I caught a glimpse in the side camera of something moving in the water outside my sub. Not inside the mirror. Outside, in my ocean. A long shape passed through my light cone and vanished into black. It moved too straight, too clean. No tal guip, no fin. A jointed slide, like a machine arm. The water around it didn't swirl the way water should. It didn't disturb particulate. It was like it moved through a thicker medium than the rest of the ocean, like space made way for it. I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted like metal. "Jory," I said into the mic without thinking, and my voice broke on his name. "Jory, if you can hear this." Static. Then, faintly, underneath the static, a wet breath. And my mother's voice again, but not quite hers. "Nate, don't answer them." The voice layered with another, a half-beat behind my brother's. "Don't talk, don't talk, don't." I ripped the headset off my ear so hard it hurt, like removing it could remove the sound. The radio still hissed from the console speaker, low and insistent. "Nate," the thing said, patient. "Return." I slammed the radio power switch down. The hiss died. The cabin got even quieter. Then the hull creaked, and in that creak, in the vibration, I felt something like laughter. Not sound, a pressure change, a mocking little squeeze on the sphere. I stared at the mirror plane until my eyes stung. Tiny imperfections became visible now. Hairline cracks in glass, except they didn't branch randomly. They formed patterns, repeating like circuitry, like language. I tried to think like a diver, like a tech, like a sane human. I tried to think of every weird thing I'd seen in water that had a rational explanation. Bioluminescent algae, rogue waves, mirages, sonar ghosts. Things that look supernatural until you learn the physics. But this wasn't a weird fish. This wasn't a freak current. This was a door, and it was adjusting itself. My depth ticked up past 500 for 80 for 60. The city glow in the mirror brightened and dimmed in slow pulses, like it was breathing. The silhouette of the other sub stayed in view, drifting, waiting. I realized something else then, and it made my stomach twist worse than the coordinates. The mirror plane was always in front of me, always centered. I wasn't chasing it. I wasn't keeping it in frame. It was keeping me, like it knew where my eyes were. Like the cage wasn't just water. It was attention. I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to picture my brother's face. Not the coffin, not the photos, the real face. The way he used to come up from a dive with his hair plastered to his forehead and a grin like he'd stolen something. The way he'd smack the side of a boat and say, "Still floating." We grew up around water. Our dad was a crab fisherman until his back gave out. My brother and I learned to tie knots before we learned to write. We learned early what the ocean does to arrogance. We watched guys come back missing fingers, missing teeth, missing friends. We respected the water because we were too dumb not to be near it. My brother was the brave one, the one who'd do night dives just because he liked the way the world went quiet. I was the cautious one, the one who checked gauges twice and taped back up lights to my leg like it was war. And he still died on land. A stupid car, a wet road, a guardrail. I hadn't heard his voice since the last voicemail I couldn't delete. I kept it like a wound. Now the ocean was wearing his voice like a mask. I opened my eyes and felt something harden in me. Anger. Not heroic anger. The petty, dirty anger you get when someone uses your family to manipulate you. "Fuck you," I said quietly to the cabin, to the plane, to whatever was listening. The cabin lights dipped again, like a hand tightening. "Return," the thing said, not through radio now. Through the hull. Through vibration. Through my bones. The word formed as pressure. As a feeling. I started talking back. Not because I thought it would help, but because silence felt like surrender. "You want me? Come get me. You already dragged me across the damn planet. What are you waiting for?" The mirror plane didn't rush. It didn't flare. It just drifted a little closer, smooth as oil. My proximity alarm chirped again. The ocean outside looked thicker somehow, darker, like the particles were suspended in gelatin. The light from my flood lamp didn't spread as far as it should. It stopped short, like it hit a wall of fog that wasn't fog. I checked my battery again. 5 hours, maybe less if this thing kept dipping my lights like it owned my power. I needed a move, a real move, something that wasn't just go up and hope. My eyes flicked to the underside payload module indicator on the console. The client had insisted on it. A safety module for PR, bright orange, easy to recover, full of spare comms gear and a locator. Bolted under the sub, a removable belly pack. You could drop it in a crisis to lighten the craft and mark your last known location. I stared at the jettison switch like it was a gun. Dropping it would change my buoyancy. Might give me a little edge. Might confuse whatever was controlling the volume around me. Might do nothing. Or I could throw it at the mirror. The idea was stupid, which meant it was the first idea that felt like mine. I waited until my depth stabilized around 400. I wanted enough pressure that the ocean was still serious, but not so much that a sudden movement would make the sub do something unpredictable. The plane hovered close enough now that my forward camera filled with it. The cracks patterns glinted under my light like raised veins. I wrapped my fingers around the safety cover on the jettison switch and hesitated. A memory flashed, my brother on a boat, holding a flare gun like it was a joke. Always have one stupid thing you can do, he'd said. Sometimes stupid saves you. I flipped the cover up. The console gave a warning beep. Are you sure? Like a machine cared about me. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. I hit jettison. The sub jolted upward as the payload detached. The whole craft felt lighter, like a backpack coming off. On the camera, the orange module rose between me and the plane, its little strobe blinking like a heartbeat in black water. For half a second, I felt a sick relief. Like I'd done something. Like I'd changed the story. The moment the module touched the mirror plane, it didn't bounce. It didn't splash. It didn't crack it. It disappeared. No distortion. No debris. 1 second there, next second gone like someone cut it out of reality with scissors. In the reflection, the orange module appeared on the far side and drifted like it had always belonged there. I felt my stomach drop. Not because it worked too clean. Something on the far side moved fast now, rushing toward the module. Not swimming, sliding. A long shape, multiple joints, closing distance like a machine arm reaching for a drop tool. The plane tilted more, as if pleased, like it had just been offered food, and my sub surged forward, not from thrusters. I hadn't touched them. The ocean itself grabbed me and pulled me straight at the plane. My harness straps bit into my shoulders. Loose tools slid off the shelf and clanged against the hull. My coffee thermos, stupid I know, but I always brought one, rolled and hit the bulkhead with a hollow thunk. I grabbed the controls and fought, punching thrusters sideways, trying to yaw away. The sub resisted like it was stuck in syrup. The forward motion didn't slow. On the camera, the mirror plane's surface rippled slightly, like it wasn't solid after all, like it was a skin over an opening. The word came again, not through speakers, not through radio, through my teeth. Return. I swallowed hard and tasted blood again. My tongue was chewed raw. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the controls. I did something I hadn't done since my brother died. I prayed. Not to God, not to anything holy. I just aimed a thought at the memory of my brother like throwing a rope into dark water. Help me. The cabin lights flickered. My dead brother's voice whispered in my headset, even though I'd killed the radio power. Don't ping them. I'm not, I whispered back, and hated how small I sounded. The plane filled my view. The other ocean's city glow pulsed brighter, like it sensed a delivery. The silhouette of the other sub drifted closer from the far side, aligning itself like two magnets finding their match. I stared at that silhouette and saw the pale shape inside shift closer to the porthole. A face pressed near the glass. My face. Not dead, not decayed. Awake, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing like it was trying to speak through thick water. My whole body went cold with a kind of terror that wasn't just fear of dying. It was fear of continuing. Fear of being alive somewhere else, trapped, watching myself arrive. The forward motion increased. The harness dug in. The sub groaned like it was being squeezed. The thing's laughter came through the hull now, stuttering, imitative, like a recording played through a wet speaker. A laugh that didn't know why people laugh, only that it's a sound that happens when something gets what it wants. I had one thought, clear as a bell in my skull. I wasn't the first one this happened to, and I was about to become the next one. The mirror filled the whole forward screen, and my own face on the far side kept mouthing something I couldn't hear, like the glass between us was water and the water between us was glass. The pull got mean. Not dramatic, not movie monster. Mean the way Riptide is mean, quiet, indifferent, stronger than you, and it doesn't care if you understand it. My harness dug into my ribs. The sub shook once like it hit turbulence, even though there's no such thing. The little compass spun a quarter turn and stopped like it got tired. I tried the thrusters again, harder, full lateral, full yaw. It barely mattered. The sub moved like it was being dragged through wet sand. I tasted copper and realized my tongue was bleeding again. I'd been chewing myself apart without noticing. The plane's surface rippled. Not like water ripples, like skin flexing, like a membrane deciding to open. Inside the cabin, everything went slightly dimmer, not because the lights changed, but because my eyes did, like my brain started bracing for pressure. I could hear the knocks now, without the cameras. Not on the hull, not outside, inside the sphere. Like the titanium itself had learned a new kind of vibration. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. The same pattern as before. Like it was practicing. The laughter came again, that stuttering, wet imitation, and underneath it, I heard a clean sonar ping. It wasn't my equipment. It wasn't coming from the radio. It felt like it came from my fillings. Ping. The echo came back wrong. Too fast, too slow, like the ocean didn't agree with itself. I went cold with a stupid, specific thought. It's measuring me. Me. Not the sub. Not the hull. My brother's voice whispered in my ear again, and this time it didn't sound like it was coming through a speaker. It sounded like it was right behind my left shoulder. "Nate," he said tight, "do something stupid." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was my brother, because that was exactly the kind of advice he'd give when the world got serious. "I already did," I whispered. My breath fogged the inside of the porthole in a thin crescent. The plane rippled again. The edge of it, what I thought was a clean, straight border, wavered like heat haze. Like it didn't know whether it was a line or a mouth. The other sub on the far side drifted closer. My face pressed tighter to its porthole, eyes blown wide, and I swear to God it looked terrified of me. I slammed my palm against the emergency panel and flipped it open. I didn't have a lot left. I'd already thrown the payload at it. I couldn't outthrust the pull. I couldn't outthink something that had dragged me across the planet like I was a hook in its lip. I had one ugly lever I'd never used in my life except in training, and even then we treated it like a joke. See O2 scrubber purge and cabin dump. It's not meant for steering. It's not meant for anything but buying seconds if your air goes bad. But the physics are still physics. If you violently vent a chunk of your internal pressure and mass through a valve, you get a tiny impulse. Not much. Not enough to save you from anything real. Unless the thing dragging you is obsessed with perfect alignment. Unless it wants you centered. Unless it wants you to hit the plane head-on, like you're docking. My hand shook so bad I missed the latch the first time. I forced my fingers to work like I was back on a normal job, and the only consequence was a client yelling. I thumbed the purge valve open. The cabin hissed hard, sharp enough to make my ears ring. The pressure gauge dipped. My throat went dry instantly, like the air got thin. The sub twitched sideways, barely, like a fish flicking its tail. The pull didn't stop. I yanked it again, longer this time, and braced my boots against the footwell. The sub kicked, left another hair. And it was enough. The plane was right there. The mouth skin rippling. The city glow behind it pulsing like it was ready to swallow me. My left side scraped the edge instead of slamming dead center. It didn't feel like metal hitting metal. It felt like my skin touched a cold tongue. My vision flashed white so fast it hurt. The cameras glitched into a double exposure. 2 oceans layered over each other like someone couldn't decide which reality to render. For half a second, I saw the surface of one place and the depth of another at the same time. I saw my own hull on both sides of the plane, like I was split and mirrored, and neither half knew which one was the original. My stomach lurched like the gravity changed direction. My teeth buzzed, and then the pull snapped off so hard my body slammed into the harness, and I grunted, air punching out of me. Loose gear went flying. The thermos hit the bulkhead and exploded coffee into the air in a brown mist that hung there for a second like the cabin forgot how settling works. The sub spun once slow, nauseating. Alarms chirped. A breaker popped. The cabin lights flickered, steadied, flickered again. I forced my hands back to the controls and stopped the spin before it made me puke. When the forward camera settled, the mirror plane was gone. No glow, no city, no other sub, just black water and particles drifting like ash in a flashlight beam. I stared at it, waiting for it to slide back into view, waiting for the ocean to grab me again, waiting for the word to press through my bones. Nothing. Silence, except for the fan and my own ragged breathing. I sat there for a full 10 seconds with my hands hovering because my brain didn't trust the absence. Like a diver who's been in rough surf and suddenly hits calm water. Your body keeps tensing because it doesn't believe you're safe. Then the hull knocked. One single tap from outside. Not hard, not angry, like a fingertip on glass. I flinched so hard my shoulder cramped. The knock didn't repeat. I didn't wait around to see if it would. I started my ascent like my life depended on it, because it did. Slow enough not to hurt myself. Fast enough not to give whatever that was time to change its mind. I dumped ballast in careful increments and watched the depth numbers climb toward zero, my eyes flicking between gauges like they were faces in a crowd. 200 meters, 150, 120. The cabin smelled like coffee now, sharp and bitter, mixing with the stale rubber smell. It made my stomach twist. I wiped my mouth with the back of my glove and saw blood on the fabric. I've been chewing my own tongue like it was food. 100 meters, the dead quiet lifted. Sound returned the way feeling returns to a limb. Slow, prickly, painful. The hull creaks came back with little echoes. My breathing sounded like breathing again, not like it was wrapped. At 80 meters, I heard something behind me in the water, faint through the hull. A scrape. Not long, not steady. Like something dragged along the outside of the sphere, just enough to remind me it could. I didn't turn the cameras. I didn't want to give my eyes anything else to carry. At 50 meters, the radio power switch I'd killed earlier clicked by itself. Just a tiny mechanical tick. It didn't turn on. It just moved, like someone tested it. I slapped my palm over it and held it down, stupidly, like I could keep it from being touched by sheer force of will. At 30 meters, my headset crackled once. My brother's voice, faint as a memory, "Don't look back." I whispered, "I'm not," and my voice sounded like gravel. At 10 meters, the water brightened. The surface above became a trembling silver skin again. I eased up, careful, and broke through. The sub slapped the surface and rocked. Sunlight punched through the porthole, and the air that came through the hatch when I opened it smelled like Pacific kelp and diesel and someone's cheap cologne from the chase boat. I almost cried. Not pretty crying. The ugly kind, the kind you do when you realize you've been holding your breath for an hour. I climbed out, and the world looked right. Same sky spacing, same sloppy Oregon cloud cover, same ugly gray-blue water, same chop, same wind that smells like cold fish and boat exhaust. And there, 200 yards away, was the chase boat. Jory was standing at the rail, hand shading his eyes, looking at me like I'd crawled out of grave. The boat's engines roared as it came closer. The wake slapped against my sub and made it bob. I raised my arms and waved like a person on a sinking life raft, because for a second my brain still didn't trust the reality. Jesus Christ, Jory's voice barked through the headset. Where the fuck did you go? I tried to answer and my throat locked. I swallowed and tasted brine and blood. I'm here, I said. Get me the fuck out of the water. They pulled alongside and threw a line. The deckhand with his sunburn, Kyle, I think, hooked it and started hauling me in like I was a tuna. Hands grabbed my suit straps. Someone cursed. Someone laughed in that relieved, angry way people laugh when they thought they'd lost you. They got me onto the deck, and I collapsed on a non-slip like my legs had forgotten how to be legs. My boots left wet marks. My suit reeked of stale water and rubber. Jory crouched next to me, eyes narrowed. Your comms dropped for 40 minutes. Your beacon pinged. He pointed out to the water behind us. Out there, 2 miles off, like you drifted, but you weren't answering and the sub wasn't on radar. I stared at him, trying to decide how much truth I could say without getting sedated. We need to leave, I said. Now. Kyle laughed once, shaky. We're leaving. But what the hell? Now, I repeated louder. I grabbed Jory's sleeve hard enough to make him look at my hand. Don't argue with me. Start the engines and go. Jory didn't like being grabbed. He's a captain. Captains hate feeling like someone else is steering their boat. He pried my fingers off. Nate, talk to me. Did you lose control? Did you black out? Did you? I didn't black out, I snapped. I didn't lose control. I stopped. I could hear how insane it sounded in my own mouth. I could see the deckhands' faces tighten in that way people's faces tighten when they're deciding whether you're hazard. Jory leaned closer. Something what? I swallowed. My tongue hurt. My jaw hurt from clenching. Something hit the hull, I said because that part was true, and my NAV went crazy. I don't trust the water out here. Jory stared at me for a beat, like he was weighing experience against bullshit. He's been in squalls that broke masts. He's seen whales breach too close and nearly roll boats. He knows weird happens, but he also knows panic is contagious. He stood up. All right, we're done. Haul him in. Cut it. Kyle nodded and moved to the crane controls. The other deckhand, Mia, started throwing straps. Then Graham, the client, came out of the cabin like a storm in human form. He'd been inside, probably yelling in his phone the whole time, because that's what he does when reality doesn't obey him. He had a headset on one ear, and his eyes were red like he'd been staring at screens too long. He looked at me on the deck like I was a broken appliance. What did you do? He said. Not a question, an accusation. I pushed myself up on my elbows and met his eyes. We're done. His face twitched. Excuse me. I pointed with a shaking finger out toward the ocean. We're done. I'm not going back in. Haul the sub and leave. He laughed, sharp, fake. I paid for the full test window. Then you pay to get nothing, I said. My voice was steadier than my hands. Anger does that. It gives you structure, because I'm not dying for your highlight reel. Jory stepped between us automatically. Graham, chill. Don't tell me to chill, Graham snapped. And then he looked down at the deck where my hands had left bloody smears from my tongue. His eyes narrowed. Are you injured? Did you damage my equipment? It's not your equipment if I'm inside it, I said, and I heard my own bitterness. It's my coffin first. He ignored that. He pulled his phone out like it was a weapon. My tracker says your auxiliary module is pinging in the wrong location. Why is it pinging there? Why did it detach? My stomach sank. I'd almost forgotten the module. I looked at Jory, then at the water, then back at Graham. If I admitted I'd jettisoned it on purpose, he'd lose his mind. If I lied, he'd sniff it like blood. I had an emergency buoyancy event, I said, which is the most bullshit professional phrase I could manage. I dropped it to stabilize. Graham's nostrils flared. You dropped it? Into the ocean? Yes. Without authorization. Authorization? I barked a laugh. You weren't down there with me. Your authorization doesn't mean shit at depth. He stepped closer, close enough I could smell his cologne under the diesel. That module is expensive. I stared at him and felt something inside me go hard and cold. So am I. For a second, I thought he might hit me. He had that rich man rage where they're not used to being denied. His hand flexed around his phone like he wanted to throw it at my face. Instead, his phone buzzed. He looked down. His face drained so fast it was almost funny. He held the screen up like his hands stopped obeying him. A video file had appeared. No sender. No download bar. No notification chain. just a file sitting there like it had always been there. The thumbnail showed a blinking orange strobe in black water. My dump module. Jory leaned in, frowning. What the hell is that? Graham's lips parted. He didn't answer. His thumb hovered, trembling. Don't, I said, and I surprised myself with how loud it came out. Graham looked up at me, eyes wide, and there was something in them I hadn't seen before. Fear, because whatever this was, it wasn't his. He couldn't buy it. He couldn't sue it. He couldn't threaten it with bad press. He tapped the file anyway. The video played. The orange module drifted through an ocean that wasn't ours. The water looked thicker. The particles moved wrong. The faint city glow sat in the background, rows of aligned lights like windows under the sea. Something slid into frame, long-jointed, not swimming, gliding. It wrapped around the module with something like arms, but arms that didn't bend like arms, more like segmented tools. It pulled the module down toward the glow like it was retrieving trash. Then the camera angle changed. Not a cut, not a zoom. A change like someone else started filming from somewhere else. And I saw the small sub drifting nearby on the far side of that other ocean. Same model, same shape, same orange collar. Jory's breath caught. Made a choking sound. Graham's phone speaker crackled with a wet little hiss. And through the porthole of that other sub, a face pressed close from inside the cockpit. My face, alive, awake, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing like it was trying to talk through thick water. My stomach lurched so hard I thought I'd puke on Graham's shoes. The phone kept playing. Tinny audio leaked out, and under the hiss there was again a voice, layered and wet, using my brother's tone like a stolen coat. Return. Graham dropped the phone. It hit the deck and kept playing, the sound small and awful in the open air. Jesus, Mia whispered, and she backed away like the phone might bite her. Graham stared at the water beyond the rail like he could spot a door floating there. His mouth worked. His eyes darted, looking for a solution that had money-shaped edges. Then he did the thing rich men do when confronted with something bigger than them. He tried to buy it anyway. He lunged for his phone, snatched it up, and started walking toward the rail with it held out like an offering. No, I said, and my voice broke on the word. Graham ignored me. He kept walking, arm extended, phone playing that wet voice on loop like a fucking siren. Return, it said again, cheerful now like it was being invited. Jory moved, but I was faster. I grabbed Graham by the back of his jacket and yanked him down onto the deck so hard his teeth clicked. He yelped and slammed his cheek against the non-slip. A smear of blood appeared where his lip split. He shrieked and twisted, trying to swing at me. He connected with my shoulder, weak. I didn't feel it. He screamed, called me every name he could think of, and then some names that were just noises of rage. You assaulted me. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are. I hissed in his ear, close enough that he could smell the brine on my breath. You're bait. He froze for half a second, and that half second was the only time I saw him understand. Not the city, not the plane, not the physics. The simple reality. Something in the ocean wanted a person, and he was the kind of person who'd walk right up to the edge and lean over if someone told him it was exclusive. Jory and Kyle hauled him off me. Graham fought like a drunk toddler. Mia grabbed the phone and smartly turned it face down on the deck like hiding the screen would hide the problem. The voice kept leaking through anyway, muffled but persistent. Return. Jory snapped, enough, and stomped on the phone hard enough to make it crunch. The screen cracked. The sound cut off. For a second, the boat felt like a normal boat again. Then, from the water beside us, something knocked. Not on the sub, on the boat. One clean tap against the hull, right under the rail. Every head snapped toward it. The water there looked normal. Just chop, just foam. But I saw a ripple move against the swell again, like something under the surface pushed up to test the boundary and the ocean politely made room. Jory didn't ask questions after that. He just shouted, engines. Now, the outboards roared. The boat surged forward. Wake fanned out. The crane swung the sub up and strapped it down sloppy because nobody cared about elegance anymore. Kyle's hand was shaking so bad, he dropped a ratchet strap twice. Graham sat on the deck, held by Mia's knee in his back like he was a detainee, spitting blood and cursing, and for once his voice didn't carry authority. It carried panic. We ran hard back toward the coast, the boat slamming over swells, spray icing our faces. Halfway in, the radio came back to life by itself. Not our radio, not the VHF. The little internal speaker on the sub, the one I'd killed earlier, crackled. Everyone heard it because it was loud enough to cut through engine noise. Return, the voice said, my brother's impatience wearing my mother's softness like a glove. Kyle made a noise like he was going to cry. Mia's face went pale. Jory stared at the sub like it was an animal with rabies. I lunged across the deck, tore the sub's external panel open with my fingers, and yanked the power cable to the comms unit. Sparks bit my glove. I didn't care. The voice stopped. The ocean behind us stayed quiet. We didn't slow down until we hit the calmer water near the harbor, where the smell of shore, mud, algae, human trash became thick enough to feel like safety. When we docked, everything happened fast and ugly. Graham tried to call someone. His phone was dead. He demanded we pay for it. Jory told him to go fuck himself. They screamed at each other on the pier while I sat on an overturned cooler and stared at the water between pilings, watching the way it lapped like it was innocent. The Coast Guard showed up because someone always calls someone. Two guys in uniforms asked me if I'd had a medical incident, if I'd lost time, if I'd hit something submerged. I said instrument anomaly and comms interference and unrecoverable auxiliary module, like those words were bricks I could stack between me and insane. I didn't tell them about the mirror. I didn't tell them about the city. I didn't tell them I'd seen my own face behind glass at impossible depth. Because here's the thing. If you tell people something too far outside their world, they don't expand their world. They shrink you. They make you the problem. So I wrote my report with clean, boring words. Cover my ass. Cover Jory's. Cover the company. It was muscle memory. The same way you rinse gear after a dive, even if the dive was a nightmare. Graham threatened lawsuits. He threatened to ruin my career. He threatened to buy the marina and fire Jory just to prove he could. Jory told him in front of everyone, "You could buy the ocean too, you prick." Graham didn't laugh. He left, pale, jaw tight, eyes flicking to every puddle like it might open. I went home, and I did all the normal things you do after a job because routine is how you keep from thinking. I peeled off the suit. I scrubbed salt out of my hair until my scalp hurt. I threw my gloves in the sink and watched brown water run off them, blood and coffee, and God knows what else. I drank a glass of tap water and it tasted wrong. Too flat, like it didn't have enough minerals. Like it hadn't been in the ocean long enough to learn how to be water. That night, I couldn't sleep. My apartment is a cheap second-floor place near the harbor. You can hear gulls at all hours. You can smell low tide through the window if the wind is right. It's not scenic. It's just close. I like being close. Even after what happened, I still like being close, which is its own kind of sickness. I lay on my bed in the dark and listen to the building breathe. Pipes gurgle. Radiators click. The distant hum of someone's TV. A car door slam down the block. And under all of it, faint because my brain was now tuned to it, I heard water. Not outside. Not waves. Inside the walls. A slow drip somewhere it shouldn't be. I got up and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The sink was empty. The faucet was off. The drip sound kept coming. I crouched and opened the cabinet under the sink, expecting a leak. Dry. I pressed my ear to the cabinet wall. Anyway, like an idiot, like maybe I could hear my own sanity cracking. The drip sound wasn't in the cabinet. It was in the apartment itself, like the building had a heartbeat made of water. My phone buzzed on the counter. No ringtone, no vibration pattern, just a single buzz like a tap. I stared at it. No caller ID, no missed call, just a file, a video. The thumbnail showed a calm Pacific surface under moonlight. Black water, white line of reflected moon. The kind of shot you'd put in a meditation app if you weren't afraid of the ocean. My whole body went cold again. I didn't open it. I picked the phone up with 2 fingers like it was contaminated and walked it to the sink. I turned the water on full blast and held the phone under the stream like water could wash information away. The screen stayed lit under the water, bright and stubborn. The file sat there waiting. The drip sound in the walls stopped. For a second, everything in the apartment got too quiet. Then my phone speaker, drowned under the faucet, crackled. Return. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was intimate, like someone whispering into your ear when you're trying to sleep. I jerked my hand back and almost dropped the phone into the garbage disposal. The water kept running. The screen kept glowing under it like an eye. I grabbed a dish towel, wrapped the phone in it, and shoved it into the freezer like that made sense. Like cold could slow whatever this was. Like you can freeze a voice. I stood there with my hands shaking and my mouth tasting like metal and tried to breathe. In, out. The drip sound came back, slow and patient. I went into my bathroom because that's what you do when you don't know what else to do. You go to a smaller room. You try to make yourself contained. The mirror over the sink reflected me in harsh light. My face looked normal, tired, salt crust at the corner of my mouth, a red spot where I'd bitten my tongue, the little scar on my chin from when I slammed it on a boat ladder years ago. Everything in the right place. I leaned closer, eyes scanning for anything off, because if something replaced me, maybe there'd be a seam. Maybe my pupils would be wrong. Maybe my reflection would lag. I watched my own eyes blink. They blinked on time. I watched my chest rise. It rose on time. I hated that I needed a check. I hated that I couldn't just trust my own face anymore. The drip in the walls slowed, like whoever was listening leaned in. I whispered my brother's name once. Just once. Quiet. Not a prayer. A test. My own mouth in the mirror shaped the name perfectly. And from somewhere behind me, in the apartment, not in the bathroom, I heard my dead brother whisper it back in perfect sync with my lips, like the sound came out of the mirror and my throat at the same time. Nate, the voice said, using my brother's tone, my mother's softness, my own tiredness layered under it like a bass note. Return. I froze so hard my skin prickled. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe because I could feel the room holding its breath with me. Then, faint as a fingertip on glass, I heard a slow scrape on the outside of my bathroom window. Not a branch, not a bird. A careful drag, testing the surface like something in the air had learned how to behave like water and was checking if it could open. The scrape paused, then tapped once. One clean knock, like the hull, like the chase boat, like it had found me again. I backed away from the mirror without turning my back on it. Stupid old instinct, and my heel hit the bathtub. I nearly fell. The scrape at the window shifted downward, slow, like whatever it was moved along the glass looking for a seam. My freezer clicked in the kitchen, a muffled buzz from inside it, like a phone trying to ring through ice. Return, the voice said again, softer, almost amused. And under that word, under the drip in the walls, under my own heart hammering, I heard a clean sonar ping somewhere inside my apartment, bright bell-like impossible. Ping. The echo came back from too close, like the space inside my home was deeper than it should have been. I stood there in my own bathroom, barefoot on cold tile, staring at my reflection and trying not to give it anything. No words, no breath, no acknowledgement, while something on the other side of my life tested the window the way a diver tests a hatch. Slow. Patient, like it had all the time in the world.